Ever wondered what it takes to scale a startup while avoiding the tech pitfalls and that can sink your ship? Today, we are diving into the world of SaaS, scalable systems, and startup survival with none other than Brian Childress, a seasoned technical advisor and fractional CTO with over 15 years of experience across industries like healthcare, finance, and education. Brian has been the go to guy for CEOs and CTOs looking to make the right tech decisions. Whether you are a non technical founder or a tech savvy entrepreneur, Brian's pragmatic, non nonsense approach will help you navigate the complex world of software development and scaling. So let's unlock some valuable insights. I'm your host, Ash, and this is a show where I interview proven founders and industry experts who share their stories, strategies, and insights to help you build, launch, and grow your business. So I hope you enjoy the show. Brian, welcome to the show.
Ash, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote, something that inspires or motivates you would like to share with our audience?
Yeah, I have quite a few, but the one that
Mhm.
is ringing true right now is failure isn't the opposite of success. Rather, it's part of the path to get there.
Indeed, indeed. Couldn't agree more. Failed so many times, learn from it, and then just step back, right?
Absolutely.
Great stuff, great stuff. So Brian, tell our listeners about you. Where did you started your journey? I'm eager to learn more about the person. Can you take us back to your roots and share with our listeners about your upbringing, childhood? How did your early experiences shape your journey and eventually led you to become a visionary CDO?
Yeah, so I've been in technology for most of my career, Ash. But what's interesting is technology is really my second career.
Hmm.
I went to school and worked in a completely different field for a few years, found out that that just wasn't quite the fit for me, and went and made a big shift into technology. And that's where I've been hanging out for the past 15 years or so.
Hmm.
Growing up, I was not the kid that was programming computer games on my family's computer at 8 years old. It wasn't me. I didn't get
Hmm.
into computers and technology until, like I said, well after my undergraduate career. And for me, a lot of what I kind of lean on now as the ways that I lead teams and work with different companies is from how the lessons that I learned coming up through undergraduate and then even before. So I lean a lot on those early lessons, the ways that I interacted with individuals all the way to the playground in grade school. All of
Hmm.
those things I draw upon now to help me be successful and help me to deliver and serve for my clients.
Cool. And well, were there any key influences from your family or surrounding that made you choose this particular side of industry?
Not necessarily. I really looked at what were some of the bigger life goals. And so I think some of those I can certainly draw upon inspiration from family members and those around that I started to learn from and admire. From there, I was able to develop a clear set of life goals, professional goals. And then I searched for the areas that really interested me, tried a lot of different things to see what fit. And for
Hmm.
me, technology was just the thing that spoke to me. It was really surprising because early on, I never thought I would be in technology, and certainly not to the degree that I am now. But it is something that really has kind of taken a hold of me.
Got it. Got it. So, Brian, you worked with both startups as well as established organizations, right? What's the biggest challenges non technical founders face when trying to build tech driven companies?
One of the biggest challenges is not understanding or not knowing what technology really means for them and their business. There's a number of different ways that we can leverage technology, which at the end of the day is just a tool. There are a number of ways that we can use technology to help grow and scale a business. And there are a lot of ways where technology holds back a business. And I think a lot of non technical founders feel that in that they they know that technology, they need it, and they know it's going to be expensive, and so they invest a lot, but typically it's in the wrong places, or they invest too much too early, and they aren't
Mm.
necessarily validating either the entire idea or certain features that their customers need or want. And so they're spending a lot of money, a lot of time and resources just in the wrong place. And
Mm.
unfortunately, that can be really a negative impact on a lot of businesses for different founders, whether they're technical or not.
Got it. Got it. And when a founder is considering hiring a freelancer or an agency, what are the key factors they should keep in mind to avoid costly mistakes?
I think one of the biggest things that I encourage the folks that I work with is to maintain control of the business effectively,
Mm.
maintain control of the technology if they're going to be working with a freelancer or with a development agency. The founder should have full access to the code, to the servers and where the code is deployed. They just should have full access to all communication and documentation that exists, and they should be checking in regularly. Even if they aren't technical, they should still have control over those things. That's where I see a lot of um, we'll call them horror stories for
Mm.
founders, technical or not, that when they're working with a freelancer or a development agency, they lose control. And for many of them, they lose control of what is their business. It's not just the code, it's their entire business model. So, really protecting themselves is key.
Mm. Gotcha. And when you hire offshore development companies, and this is kind of an hot topic, right? Uh, Nowadays, headcounts are the most expensive parts of your whole business. So, the more than headcounts you have, the more your expenditure or your capex becomes. So, offshore development is kind of hot topic. But what are the some risks you have and how you have seen and how can founders mitigate them other
Well, I
than
think
the control over the code thing?
Yeah, so I think that's really a key component is
Mhm.
controlling the environment. The founder is the one, and they may need some guidance, but to set up the GitHub repositories and where the infrastructure is deployed, uh, that's one key component. Another is really around communication and whether we're sitting next to each other in the same building or we're 12 hours apart on completely different other sides of the world, the
Mhm.
communication is still a continual challenge. And really, that's an area where I think a lot of founders, a lot of leaders kind of just maybe throw up their hands and say, "This is too challenging for me. I don't know how to communicate with this team. I'm not getting the response that I'm looking for. I'm not getting the answers that I need." And so they may blame the development agency or the freelancer. And a lot of times it comes down to just the communication between the two parties. That's certainly an area where I really want to focus in when I'm working with my clients is so that we can have really good communication, even
Mhm.
though the team that I'm working with may be on the complete other side of the world. Another area that I see we need to have just a very hyper focus on is seeing continual progress and very often. And what I mean by that is a lot of times what we see happening is a founder, non technical or not, will hand over an ask to a development team or to a freelancer and say, "Hey, this is what I want." And then the founder will or the leader will just kind of take a step back and assume that that group knows exactly what they mean, how to build it, and how to build it most effectively and efficiently for the business.
Mm.
And I'm sure you're well aware and have seen scenarios where that's just absolutely not the case, where we kind of hand off full control again, and then we're expecting just magic to be delivered. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Usually, the way that that plays out is a development agency will say, "Oh, yes, we're continuing to work on it. We hit some roadblocks, we hit a little stumble, let's come back in a week and we'll have something. And then the next week comes around, and then the next week comes around, and they're just not seeing continual progress. And even if that progress is just so tiny, so minuscule, progress forward in the right direction is what we really need to be seeing. And if we don't see anything for weeks, or for some groups, they don't see anything for months, that's just a huge amount of wasted time and energy. And that can
Mm,
really put a negative impact on the business.
got it. Got it. So communication and continuous progress. Is there anything else you want to add into this list?
I think those are the two really biggest ones outside of maintaining control of the key components, right? The code and the infrastructure.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Great. And in your experience, is it more important for founder to spend time building their idea or validating it first? What's the right balance?
I think we should spend more time validating than we think that we should.
Mm,
A lot of founders feel like they have an amazing idea and that it needs to exist in the world, and they are going to go and raise money and build out a team to build this thing before they've even validated if that's the thing that people want, and more importantly, the thing that people are willing to pay for. That's really addressing the problem, and we see this a lot in software where a founder has a problem. They feel like everyone else in their industry or in that kind of vertical has the same problem. And so they must need this tool. And so I'm going to go
mm,
and build it. I always encourage the founders and the leaders that I'm working with to validate and to ask questions. And we hear this a lot. Like if our prototype or the thing that we're bringing to market we're not embarrassed by, then we waited too long. That's very, very true. And there's a
mm,
lot of ways that we can go about validating ideas with potential customers and going through that process, because it doesn't matter how beautiful and scalable I build the platform, if we can't go and sell that platform, it does no one any good for us to do that.
mm, mm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Would you be able to expand on what are the different strategies, methods, techniques, or even tools you would suggest for a CEO or a founder if you're working with them to validate their ideas?
The first is just identifying what is the problem, what do I think the solution looks like, and then who is going to have enough of that problem that they're willing to pay for my solution. And identifying who those people are and going out and talking to them. And I think that's a very hard thing when we think the solution is to build, is to actually first start and go talk to potential customers and ask
Mm,
them open questions of what are their pain points? What are the things that are keeping them up at night? What if they had just an absolute magic pill? What would it be? What would it look like? And talk to a lot of people, not just colleagues, not just your mom, but really going out there and asking potential customers. From there, I always encourage folks to start to look at what I call like clickable wireframes or prototypes. And this is where I look to tools like Figma is fantastic for this, because I can hire a really good UI UX designer to put something together. It may be rough, it may be rudimentary in Figma for fairly inexpensive. And now I can take that to the same group that I talked to see if it matches what they need, or potentially another group of new customers. Can I sell that clickable wireframe? Can I sell that prototype? Because if I can, if people are just wanting to give me their credit card right then and there, then I know I'm on to something. And then from there, we'll move into, depending on what it is, probably more like a low code or a no code type solution to start solving the problem. And then we'll continue on and adding in custom software development from there. But I always save the custom software development until the very end, because as we know, that is the most expensive piece, both in time and money. And so if I can avoid going there right away, then I'm going to have a much higher likelihood of success.
got it. Got it. So identify. Spending more time on validating the idea would be your optimal way to go forward if you sign up with a CEO, and then obviously identifying the problem, finding the ICP, and then potentially get that feedback from the ICP about if they are willing to pay for the solution. You have been in this space over 15 years already. What's the biggest thing that held you back, and what's been your biggest driver for success?
Because I wasn't, again, the kid programming computer games at 8 years old, I didn't feel like I was qualified to be out there and, pushing and growing as a software engineer, right? I didn't feel like I had that background, and so I spent a lot of time outside of the work that I was doing, learning and growing and finding mentors. And for me, that was really huge in my ability to grow and to scale and to succeed. I
Mm,
really, pushed myself against my comfort zone. The things that absolutely terrified me, I found ways to live with that fear and use it as an accelerant, use it as something to propel me. A great example is public speaking. Absolutely terrified of speaking in public. I never wanted to be the one to read aloud in class or even taking public speaking classes in college. That just
mm.
I put it off until the very last minute. Now it's something that I absolutely enjoy and look forward to. Many times a year, I have the opportunity to share the stage with a number of really smart people, and that's something I really enjoy.
Awesome. And just to elaborate on that, how did you overcome this uh, kind of like uh, you know uh, thing which held you back, like this public speaking? What did you do in order to get that fear out of yourself?
I looked at what I felt like public speaking could do for me, and more importantly, because of in my nature, I want to give, I want to share my knowledge. I felt like I was holding back valuable information, and that was unfair of me to do that to potential audience, people that could benefit from the information that I have that I've worked so hard to gain. If I didn't share that, they wouldn't have the benefit of it. And so I really looked to my audience as my motivation to push through the fear, to learn the skills, to get out there and figure out how to do it so that I could then give that information. And so I made it far less about me and much more about them.
Got it. Got it. Great. For SaaS company, Brian, companies who are looking to scale, what are the most common roadblocks and how can they overcome them?
So I think about scale, Ash, in three ways. The first is adding more users to the platform. And typically, when
Mhm.
we talk about scale, that's what many of us think about. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah.
And so when I think about adding users, it's how can I add additional users to the platform where performance for individual users stays the same or really becomes even better? So
Hmm.
as I have more users, the experience overall continues to become better.
Yeah.
That's typically what we think about around scale. Now, for me, I also think about scale in two other ways. One is how can I scale the number of features on the platform? How can
Mm,
I add more features and do it regularly? Measure the success and the usage for particular features, and do it in a way that doesn't require us to say, hey, we have to do a major refactor or we have to do a complete rewrite in order to add this new feature set. So that comes down to the software architecture and how do we build things. And then the third way that I think about scale is how can I scale the number of developers? Because a lot of times when we start to add users, users are demanding more features. And in order to add more features, we need more developers. We need more people creating things.
mm.
And so, around adding developers, what does that look like? How can I effectively and efficiently add an entire new team of developers that can continue to contribute to an existing application so that It doesn't take a month or 6 months for a developer to start contributing. They're able to contribute and feel like they're a part of the team quickly and effectively. And a lot of that comes to, what technologies do we choose? What are the guardrails that we put in place? A lot of pre-thought can go into that element of scale. So again, I think of scale in adding users, adding features, and then adding additional developers or team members.
That is really, really good way of looking towards this, because most of the time when I speak with founders who want to scale their companies, they're more focused on users. They don't much care about more developers or more features, but essentially it is kind of a side effect of adding more users anyways on your tech product or SaaS platform. So this is a really key observation, you and the strategy you put into place. That's really good. And how do you, so I want to diverge from our conversation towards the newer world, towards the future side of it, and I would like to know what are your thoughts upon how do you see AI shaping the future of startups, particularly in the next 5 years.
I think we're coming out of a little bit of an AI hype cycle, and now we're starting to see where companies are really looking at AI as a potential tool. And honestly, what I'm seeing a lot is companies are now reevaluating the things that they can use to support an AI adoption, both internally and in their platforms. For example, the thing that AI needs to be really, really successful and valuable is high quality data. And so a lot
Mm,
of companies are going back, looking at their data ecosystem or lack of data ecosystem and starting to build that out and really focusing in on, if I have really, really good data coming in, then I'm going to have a much better output for my team and for my customers.
yeah.
I think we're going to continue to see areas where AI will really augment other features or other service offerings within different platforms. And so I think we're going to get away from just bolting on AI, which is just an API call to Chat GPT, and really finding ways that we can leverage the expertise within a certain company and the thing that differentiates that particular company from its competitors, adding that, combining that with the strength and the power of AI as an amplifier to then really propel customers forward. I think we're going to see a lot in personalization. So instead of
Mm,
having a big, massive platform that I log into, when I log in, it's now my platform, right? It's tailored to me. It has the information, it has the context about who I am, what I need, and how I'm going to be able to best leverage the platform. I think we're going to see a lot of that. And that's really where I'm looking to work with founders and leaders is how can we take the information that we know about our customers and leverage that to give them a highly personalized experience that's going to be increasingly more valuable for them.
mm, mm. Got it. Got it. And I think I would like some final thoughts from you. If you could give one piece of advice to a CTO or technical founder, what would it be from your side?
A lot of times we focus so much on the technology, right? We're deciding between frameworks and scalable architectures, and at the end of the day, a lot of times those don't really matter in this to the same degree that we think they do. The business is the area that we really need to be focused on. And so as technologists, yes, we can pick the technology, we can write beautifully crafted code, but the thing that we need to do is solve a real business problem. And so
Mm,
choosing a leading edge or a bleeding edge technology may not be the best decision for us from a business perspective, and really not allowing the technology to drive our decisions, but rather focusing on the business.
got it. Got it. Great. So before we move towards the last part of our interview, I would like to ask a question to you, which I usually ask mostly technical founders on my show. Could you share a compelling case study that highlights how a company leveraged um, your expertise to achieve success and solve their key business challenge. I would love to hear about the specific problem they face, the steps taken to implement the solution, and the measurable outcomes they experience as a result.
Absolutely. I've got a great example. So it was a couple of years ago now. I was working with a company who was building a platform. And what was unique is they had a real actual deadline, right? If the platform wasn't delivered by a certain date, it was effectively useless,
Wow.
because of the nature of the deliverable. It they needed it to work.
Mm,
A lot of times deadlines we kind of just make up, but this one had a real deadline. And so that was a really interesting variable for me. The team had been building for, let's say, 6 months up until when I joined. And what they had built was not working, right? The data was not flowing from end to end, and it just wasn't working. And the big reason that it wasn't working was it was just overly complex. It just had too many moving pieces that the team didn't understand. They didn't understand how to kind of couple each one of the pieces together to make it work. And so when I joined the project, I had about 3 weeks to turn things around before, again, if we missed that deadline, it was completely useless. So I had about 3 weeks. And so what I did was I went in and ripped out about 80% of the technologies that were in there because they were too complex. They weren't what was needed. And they were overly expensive. They were just really, really challenging to work within. And we just didn't need it. So I ripped out about 80% of the technologies, and these were all technologies that we think that we need in our platform. We think that in order for us to scale, this is what Amazon uses or this is what Google uses. We don't need those things. And so
mm,
when I pulled those things out, I made a very simple architecture. And mind you, this was in the matter of a couple days. We completely re-architected, redesigned, and came up with a very simple architecture. From there, I was able to then grow the team because I still had a few features that needed to be developed. We were able to develop because the architecture was really simple. I could explain it to a brand new freelancer, brand new to the project, with a couple boxes and lines. They're like, okay, that makes sense because it's so simple. And then
mm,
they knew where their work was going to fit in. They were then able to really work through, because we simplified. We got rid of additional frameworks and languages and runtimes that we didn't need because again it was too complex. And then from there, we were able to really get things moving. And we got to a point where we were processing millions of records of data a day, getting the results. But we had all the things, right? We had machine learning in there. We had, very complex analytics and dashboards and all of those things. And if we continued down the path where we had all the tools that we're told we need in the platform, we would have never been able to deliver. Just it would not have happened. But by going from complex to simple, simple architectures scale.
mm.
That's what we were able to do, and we were able to deliver on time.
Awesome. How was the aha moment? How was the response from the stakeholders?
They loved it because
Hmm.
it had been a frustrating series of delays, and oh, we're having this problem. Oh, we're not sure how this works, and so just went from sheer frustration to sheer excitement because oh, now we're able to see progress that we thought we would have been seeing months ago. Now we're getting to that point. Now we're able to grow.
Awesome. Perfect. Great story. Thanks, Brian, for sharing that. Let's quickly go through what we have learned today. So most of the CEOs, they don't really understand what actually tech means. So they intend to invest too much too early into the solutions, and that's where you come and help them out in understanding what exactly tech means into their solution, their product, their business, and then how much time they should be investing into, or how much money or how much capital, how much effort they should be investing into any particular tech side of the things. And then the challenges you mentioned about the tech company owners or founders was maintaining control over the tech, this is one of the crucial things you mentioned, that every single founder should have this control, because this could literally, kick them out from their own sort of like seat potentially, if you lose the control over it. Some of the elements which was derived from that part was, while you're having setting up things, or maybe in your company you're dealing with freelancers or developers or other parties, the communication bit needs to be neat and clean, very streamlined, so that everybody is on the same page. That founders should be always up to date with the continuous progress, so that they understand where all the effort, all the inputs are going. And I added one part, a small bit into it, which is expectations. So I think sometimes if you set the expectation correctly with your providers, it helps quite a lot, because then the provider also knows what is expected out of me, in what time, or you know what level of quality. So that's something which I have personally faced myself. I've burned so many times my hands with offshore developers, hiring them for any projects. And uh, this is the bit which helped me out quite a lot, setting up expectation, giving them heads up that this is what I expect in this period of time. So that was really good. Anything else you want to add in this section before we move to the other parts?
No, I think that's a great synopsis. Yeah,
Yeah,
really
great.
well put.
Cool. And then the other bit which we touched today is the that founders spend quite or they don't spend enough time on validating the ideas, and that is what you suggest them to do. Invest more time into validation, and the parts we discussed about, like identifying the problem, identifying your ideal customer personas. Talk to them, talk to as many of them, to understand if they are willing to pay for the solution, what are their key pain points, and what would be their ideal product, where they say, okay, this is what I need in my life to solve this particular pain point. And a couple of tools you mentioned about while doing the validation is using clickable wireframes with Figma, I guess. Is that
Mhm.
correct? Yeah. Cool.
Yep.
Anything else you want to add in this part before we move on to the next?
No, no, great summary.
Yeah, great stuff. And then I think a couple of things we discussed about scaling the startup, which was, not just focusing on getting more and more customer onto your solution, but also, focus upon how you can add more features to, cater to the more users, as well as more team members in your team, because that's the people who are responsible to deliver the service ultimately, isn't it? We also touched upon the future of AI, where you mentioned that the quality of data, or in the sense also the quantity, is very important when it comes to the AI solutions we are implementing into our SaaS products. The USP, unique selling point. It could be the deep learning of an LLM. It could be something which nobody, or none of the AIs already have. You train your AI with your custom data. Again, falling back to the quality of data. And then one thing which I personally like was the personalization bit, because I think this is going to be the key into the next decade coming forward. Great. So this is, I think, the synopsis for our conversation today. Before going into our lightning round, I have one personal question which I always ask my guests. Throughout your journey and experience, there must have been some valuable lessons learned, right? If you don't mind sharing, could you reflect on your experience and tell us about um, one mistake or setback that you encountered? And additionally, what advice would you give our listeners based on this experience?
You added it to the diagram here, Ash, and that's
Oh,
around
okay.
expectation setting. And I think that's a really important thing that, unfortunately, it's a lesson that I've learned a couple times, is really setting expectations early, revisiting to make sure that what I'm doing, what the client is expecting, or what the client, what I'm expecting of the client, is meeting those expectations. And when we assume that we're meeting expectations, or when we assume that, the one looks this way when really it should be that way, when we're misaligned, we can really run into some major issues. And so I think that's an area I would, I've certainly learned that lesson, and I want to make sure that others really spend the time to understand what are the expectations for everything, for my users, for my customers, for my colleagues and employees, for my partners, anyone that we're working with and collaborating with. What are the expectations? And, if they're not being met, let's address them head on instead of letting them kind of grow and fester into, something really bad.
Indeed, indeed. And I totally agree with you on this one because I have faced so many challenges in my projects beforehand that this is something which I emphasize and record while dealing with new projects and new customers. Great stuff. So let's move into our next round, which is the lightning round. I've got 6 quick fire questions for you, so you can answer them as quickly as possible. You ready?
Let's do it.
Great. What are the top 3 strategies to generate leads in 2024 when it comes to work as a fractional CTO?
Being everywhere, I think, is really important. Your customers exist in a lot of different places. Find different areas where you think they may exist and start to reach out to them there. So for me, LinkedIn is a huge pool of potential clients, and so doing a lot of lead generation there. Content is huge. There's a lot of things that we know and we but we're not sharing. And so putting out content, really sharing our views, our opinions, our thoughts, our successes, and our, lessons learned is really, really valuable, because there are a lot of people that may be watching us and only seeing bits and pieces of our story. But the
Mm,
more that we put out there, the better chance that we have of connecting with them.
mm.
I think those are really big areas. And then I think it's important for us to provide value. Again, if people are thinking about working with us, they kind of want to know what they're going to be getting before they engage. And for a lot of folks, whether it's a freelancer or development agency, or myself as an advisor and fractional CTO, that's a big engagement. That's a big commitment. And so the more that I can demonstrate how I work, how I think, and how I can make a positive impact on a business, those are the things that are going to help me in finding and being able to work with the right clients.
Got it. Got it. What book would you recommend to our audience and why?
There's quite a few that I love to read. I'm going back and reading 10X is Better Than 2X by Dr. Benjamin Hardy. Big fan of a lot of the things that he puts out. I think that's a really powerful framework to rethink the ways that we can make an impact instead of just doing the same thing that we're doing a little bit more. How can I shift my thinking to an entirely new level? And when I do that, I become more creative and can solve problems and really serve my customers in a different way and at a much higher level.
Got it. What one attribute or characteristic in your mind of a successful founder?
Just willing to do all the things, especially in the early days. Founders have to wear so many hats and play so many different roles, and things like reaching out to potential customers and cold calling and doing that type of engagement with customers is so important. The other things we can figure out and we can systematize, but really being willing to kind of go all in and do the work that is required.
Got it. What's your favorite personal productivity tool or habit?
Let's see. So I have a morning routine that I've honed over many, many years. It's derivative of the miracle morning. But I found the things that really I need to do every day to feel like I'm successful and able to attack the world. And so, waking up early is a really big one for me. Water, meditation, journaling, a lot of those things are core to my ability to succeed. And I can really notice if I miss some of those, and especially if I've missed them for more than a few days, it has a real serious impact.
Got it. What's a new or a crazy business idea you would love to pursue if you had time?
It's something that I'm working on. It's a luxury camper van rental service, and
Mhm.
so really, there's a certain niche demographic that I'm targeting, and to before I go out and spend crazy amounts of money to buy some of these camper vans. I'm validating the idea by actually selling something that I don't own to
Mm,
see if there is a market for it, if people are willing to pay for it before I go out and make that big investment.
cool. And last but not least, what's an interesting or fun fact about you that most people don't know?
uh, my answer for this is um, in graduate school. One of the jobs that I had that I used to help pay for getting me through school was I was a DJ.
Ah,
Um, I did clubs and weddings and birthday parties and all sorts of random things. But yeah, one of those jobs was as a DJ.
awesome. Yeah, I remember I did some crazy jobs too when I was in university to get me by through. Cool, Brian. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story, unpacking the last years of building the business and some of the ups and downs. If people want to get in touch with you or they want to talk to you, what's the best way to do it?
LinkedIn is the best place. I invite everyone to reach out, connect, send me a message on there.
Hmm,
I would love to be able to help.
awesome. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your inspiring journey and the impactful work you're doing. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on Founders Podcast.
Thank you, Ash.
Thank you all for tuning into this episode of Founders Podcast. I hope you found our conversation with Brian insightful and inspiring. If you want to get in touch with Brian, just search for Brian Childress on LinkedIn. He will be happy to connect with you. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future interviews with proven founders and industry experts. Stay inspired, stay motivated, and keep building.